very well with our 9-time Grand Prix winner and generally just a bloody good bloke, Mark Webber. Are you with us this morning? Hello.
I am, Susie. G'day, how are you? I think, have you got some jasmine in your hair?
Have I? Yes, probably. It's
Other side.
This side. Oh, yeah,
look
thank
at that.
you.
Look at that.
It's good that you're here. Because he wasn't going to tell me. Where do we find you, Mark? Are you back over this way? Are you in the UK at the moment?
Yes, I'm back in Europe. I'm actually in Monaco at the moment, believe it or not. I don't think I'm too far from you, but I spent the first phase in Australia, which I was very, very happy with, I must admit. Stayed down there after the Grand Prix. And, lockdown on the Sunshine Coast wasn't really lockdown. It was pretty cruisy, to say the least. So we were very fortunate. Australia are going well with it. But bloody hell, extraordinary times, hey? And then I did a little pit stop in the UK, and now I'm in Monaco, and then hopefully Austrian Grand Prix in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's all kicking off. Shall we just start with that and just clear up the current state of Formula One and who's going where and what's being said and all that kind of shenanigans? Otherwise, I know everybody will be going, what's Seb doing? What's Alonso doing? So tell us, what's the current landscape?
Well, I'm very relieved that I've got a better connection than you had with John McGuinness, because John was like, wasn't it? Yes, that was hilarious, wasn't it? I mean, it was just, and I even had a shave and a haircut for you too, Susie, because I was looking a bit like John McGuinness yesterday. So that was a bit of a surprise. But anyway, yes, your question. Like, lots happened. Everyone's been bored. I think these drivers have been trying to talk to their managers about what's happening and negotiations and whatnot, and it's turned out to, set off a bit of a domino effect, because Vettel called it early straight away and said, I'm going to leave Ferrari, obviously. So then the driver market was on for young and old from there. So it's going to be fascinating to see if Sebastian even races next year in 21. I don't see him, racing for a midfield team. I think he'll get it, probably even have a year out, maybe look back for 22. He's still a young guy. Carlos Sainz at Ferrari, Daniel Ricciardo gone to McLaren, and then the season's going to be condensed. We're going to have 8 races in 10 weekends, a couple of back-to-back races at the same venues, just logistically, and obviously with the border controls and all the restrictions, that makes sense. So, wow, it's extraordinary. All the races will be done behind closed doors, obviously. I think that the Italians are very optimistic. They want to have it with fans at Monza, which of course they do. But that would be something to behold, of course, having the first race back with everyone in Monza. So lots bloody happening, Susie. Yeah, it's extraordinary. And I'm missing the 2 wheels too. I'm missing 4 wheels, but I'm missing your sport too.
More. You're probably missing our sport more.
I think you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Just before we get on to 2 wheels, because I know obviously everybody knows that you're a 2-wheel nut, but the Seb thing, his currency still high enough, do you think, to be able to take a year out and come back in with the top level?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that, when you're quickly forgotten in motorsport, as you well know. I mean, in any top flight sport or business, it's hard to hang on to that when you're invisible. So unless he can get something done, an agreement done now, well, in the next, 6 months to make 22 look attractive for a team and himself in engaging in a new relationship, then that might be quite a challenge. I certainly wouldn't want him, I don't really overly, I'm not losing any sleep what he does, to be honest, but it'd be nice to see him still on the grid and at the front. That's what he's used to. But if it means him missing out on the top seats in 22, then I don't, maybe he will retire early. But let's see what Lewis does. Let's see what the manufacturers do. Let's see Ferrari, no. Red Bull, who knows? Maybe he goes back to Red Bull, but I see Verstappen is there. He's very settled. So it's probably only Merc or nothing, isn't it, really? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, looking at where everything is and how everything's sort of fallen at the moment, it seems as though a year out would be the sensible option. But it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, you've got all these young drivers coming in. I used to do that when I first went to Formula One, called them riders. And, it changes, and obviously time is critical, and even with the talent that he clearly has. But it's been an interesting story to watch and unravel. Sad state of affairs at Williams, it seems, at the moment. That was not good news, was it?
Yeah, that's right. I think that let's hope they find a really good investor, someone that can take a good chunk of the business there and take it forward. The Williams Advanced Engineering side, so they have another part of the company that's actually doing really, really well. So that's positive. But the racing team itself, we know that they haven't enjoyed the best performance of late, and yeah, they need to find someone that's going to have a long-term view on that purchase, obviously, to get them out of that. Hopefully, for the staff and security and all of that, there's a lot of families there, and that's where the sport doesn't. This current environment is, any business or sport is not immune to people losing their jobs, and that's what it's clearly very serious, and the teams like Williams, I hope they come through it.
Martin was on here last week or the week before, and I asked him whether he felt that Formula One could have survived a whole year without racing, and he thought it was really kind of knife edge stuff, because it's such an expensive sport, isn't it? It needs so much funding to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to park that would have been, there's, as you know, Suzi, there's so many supply chains, and there's so much momentum and inertia around the sport and the business and the promoters in locations. There's tourism, governments, have a different sort of spin on why they have an event there, whether it's Singapore, whether it's us in Australia, whether it's British Grand Prix, which is, the sort of the heartbeat of the sport. So if all of those collectively as a nucleus said, yeah, we're going to turn it off for 13 months, and that would have been, I think, a really, really tough comeback. But thank God it's not the case. I think we're going to have some good racing this year. They're going to get, the boys are going to get some sweat on their brows again, and they're going to get into it. So they're all in the same boat. Everyone's rusty, which is great. No one's got an advantage. I mean, there's been a bit of cheeky testing here and there going on, but ultimately, as we know, Suzi, when the green flag drops, the bullshit stops. Yeah.
And starting in Austria, which is a place that means a lot to you, really, doesn't it, over the years?
Yeah, look, I think it's a beautiful fluke that it's actually, well, you make your own luck, but I think it's good that it's happening there because it is a picturesque little circuit. It's owned by Red Bull. It's Mr. Mateschitz, who owns Red Bull. He owns a lot of the hotels in the area too. So I think logistically and operationally, they're in a very good position to pull off a good event there and control the sort of people coming in and out and protecting their local people as well as much as they can. So, I think that, yes, I'm biased towards Red Bull, but I think they will do a very, very, very professional job. They know that this is, a template going forward. So but they're happy to have that burden and that pressure to do a good job. So, it'll be good. I mean, there could be worse places to be stuck for 2 weeks in between races when people are, doing their thing. So, I know if you were there commentating, Suzi, you wouldn't be too disappointed to be sitting in the Austrian mountains, would you?
No, it's very amazing, very, very beautiful. I'm just going to stick some earphones in because there's someone going to chop trees down and it's very noisy. So just give me 1 sec. Let me make sure that I can hear you. Right, just speak to me again,
Yeah,
Mark.
that's very good.
Heaven, thank you very much.
Yes.
Being stuck in the Chocolate Box Mountains is a nice place to be, and I suppose with the whole kind of financial scenario that Dietrich has, not having a crowd in and stuff, it was an easier place to start, really, and the bike's going there as well. So all that makes very good sense. What do you make of Max Verstappen, Mark?
Well, he's been great for the sport. He's certainly is cavalier in his approach. Very, very young, mature. Yes, he's still got a few rough edges. We know that, but they've been polished up in the last sort of 24 months. And he's not making the same mistakes that that he was in those early phases, which is totally understandable given his age. I mean, it was extraordinary how he won.
He didn't even have a car license, did he?
I know.
Didn't even drive on the road.
Extraordinary. His first Grand Prix victory in Barcelona with Kimi just sitting on him and hassling him, and he just he nailed that off like it was like his 200th Grand Prix. So special, doesn't play anyone on their reputations. He does not care who it is. He is going to get the elbows out. He's going to have an absolute red hot go. He's flamboyant. He's brave. He is. What sports need. We see that. We've seen it with the bikes, haven't we? With Mark, we've seen it with, when Valley arrived all those years ago, the disruptors. He is a disruptor. He's turned up and said, okay, well, it's going to be on my terms. Lewis is still, as we've seen the last few years, it's been fascinating watching every now and again, Lewis stand in the middle of the boxing ring and Charles Leclerc turn up for a few races and Lewis sort of sees him off. Then Seb arrives for a few races, then Max arrives for a few races. And Lewis has still got their measure at the moment, technically as well, of course, with the car, but also he's just got so many strings in his bow as a professional Grand Prix driver now. But Max is still, he's just polishing that last little section up in terms of the whole approach, which just comes with experience. But he's absolutely world class. Like, he's an absolute. That is what you want in a Formula One driver. That is a perfect F1 driver in terms of the sort of the path that he's on. Looks extraordinary.
It brings the show, doesn't he? It reminds me a little bit of Valentino in that sense, I mean, the explosion in Holland, obviously, the love for him, and they're globally as well. He's got so many fans, and obviously there was, going to be a Dutch Grand Prix this year. And stuff,
which was great. I think it makes other countries quite jealous too, because he does like the following. We've seen it with the Dutch football fans, of course, but we don't. I mean, the English don't do that with Lewis, the Australians, the Italians do it with Valley, but you're right. It's actually it's such a subculture of people that actually love to come, which is awesome. I mean, they've got Max Verstappen grandstands full of orange, obviously all the orange merchandise and all the rest of it. So that's great to see in Austria. And like you say, the Dutch Grand Prix would have been an absolute, I don't know how the hell they would have got all those people in there, but they'll work that out for next year now.
Yeah, it would have been an absolute cracker. I mean, obviously, I was sort of there when Max came into the paddock, and it was a really interesting story, and it was great watching it unfold. And I loved the fact that he would just, Eddie would say something to him, and he would just challenge Eddie, and he would just come back at him. And I thought, whoa, this is great, This is somebody that, like you say, doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, absolutely,
And Formula One really needed it, didn't it, as well? Also because, I was excited to come into Formula One, and obviously I kind of knew about you and your connection with bikes, and then you went and bloody retired in 2013.
Thanks. But I was boring, Sue. I was so bloody boring to interview. I wasn't a Verstappen. I was a librarian. I was a librarian. I mean, us polished guys like, David Coulthard and, all of us absolute pros, that's why you do this brekkie club at breakfast, isn't it? Because if we do it in the evening, with us guys, you imagine what would happen if it was over a wee dram, like they say, a little bit of whiskey. But mate, I was very boring, and I just made the numbers up. It was good fun.
You did not make the numbers up. You weren't boring because you were very honest, and that's why I always liked chatting with you, because you would say it as it was, and you had a lot to talk about. I mean, do you know what I did yesterday? I went back to your book and I listened. I was quite busy yesterday, so I got the Audible version of it. I remember when you were bringing that, because we went for that lovely dinner with Annie, didn't we? Down the road here,
We did,
And you were sort of like, oh, it's been so much work.
So you don't get the pictures, Susie. You don't get the pictures in the audiobook.
But I had them in my head. It's a brilliant book of all the books that are in Formula One, of all the biographies and stuff. It is, if you haven't read it, Breakfast Clubbers is an absolute cracker. You will not be able to put it down. But it was a while ago, so I listened to the audio yesterday, and I didn't quite get to the end. I was in bed last night actually, and I woke up at 4 o'clock, and it was still talking.
What did you think of the person's voice that was in your ear?
Well, I thought it was good. I would have preferred it to be you, obviously.
Yeah. It's a tricky one, because people don't think of this. Like, your listeners here this morning, it's funny how, so when they do these audio books, where you write a book, which is actually, for me, quite overrated, because books, it's part of my life I'll never get back. But it's nice to have a story up there. It's a journey, job done, all cool. But then they pitch these little ideas of what sort of voice would you like to audio, basically read your book out. So I'm just interested to see what you thought about that interview, because I never really asked anyone what they thought of that person. But I made the decision, and that's what it is. I could have had, it was a pretty wide scope of individuals that in their voice, the tone of their voice and delivery was quite an interesting pitch.
Yeah, I bet, actually. I mean, obviously, having done loads of voiceovers, I don't want to sound like Toast of London here. Don't know if you've ever watched Matt Berry. That absolutely cracks me up. It's a comedy drama in the UK about a voiceover artist. It's just very, very funny. But I've done voiceovers where they've said to me, I remember doing one for Nintendo, I think it was, and they were like, it needs to be a little more blue. Like,
blue?
What the fuck does that mean? Excuse my
blue.
Yeah, blue.
Oh.
It's
like blue movies.
Well, or was it blue like sad? So I did it a bit more sad, and then they wanted it to be a bit more orange, you know. And I just thought this is a joke, because clearly what had happened is I'd probably come in, I'd nailed it straight off, but they were paying me for the hour, so they just wanted to get their
Yes.
money's worth. So
Oh,
anyway, it was only short, not like obviously your book. Reading your
yeah.
book was like what 9-10 hours worth of reading, a big job. So I can forgive a few of the pronunciation changes in there that I thought were slightly maybe Australian.
Ah, yes. The Weberisms. We call them the Weberisms.
Okay, right, the Weberisms. Yeah. I thought it was quite closely aligned to you. I mean, it had to obviously be Australian. But yeah, but just a really good book, really interesting, and it just reminded me.
It did put you to sleep in the end.
It was 2 o'clock in the morning though, Mark,
Holy
and
shit.
I haven't been sleeping.
Jeez, good effort.
I was an hour away from the end. I know what happened, obviously.
Yes.
So what it reminded me of though, and was many things, and I want to just go through those if you can bear with me.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Don't go back to my preschool. Don't go back that far. We can start like when I wasn't wearing speedos. Anyway, crack on. Go for it. Yep. See how early you go.
I'm stuck on the speedos now. You don't call them speedos in Australia, do you?
Dick stickers.
Yeah.
Dick stickers. Yeah. Actually, I bought some in lockdown, so I nearly got. It was nearly a divorce. It was nearly a divorce. So I started swimming not just cooling down swimming, like actually sort of doing some decent distance in the water, you know, not too bad. So I was swimming with some mates, and they've got the dick stickers on. I've got my boardies on, board shorts. I'm like, you know, this is a bit of drag here. I'm getting competitive. I'm like, okay, so I need to actually probably, I haven't got any dick stickers, so I might go, everything's locked down. Everything's closed. So then I went to Target. Target was open, and there was some speedos or dick stickers or budgie smugglers, whatever you want to call them. Anyway, for $8 there was these 2 pairs. I'm like, size wise, so I just got both, like medium and large. Took them home.
2 pairs for $8?
No, $8 each. Yeah, so they're like this the cheapest, nastiest. Like it's Anyway, so I got these things because I'm thinking performance, aerodynamics. I need to get in the water, and then I put the mediums on when I got home, and it was horrendous. They were pretty tight, to say the least. So I thought, I'm going to wind Anne up here. So I came down into the kitchen, and I come on, and she just absolutely nearly had a heart attack. She's like, there is no fucking way you are leaving this house with those on. Because on the arse cheek, you wouldn't believe, I didn't even know, but on the arse cheek, they had piping hot. They had like a little logo, piping hot, which was not the case. So yeah, she took the piss out of me. She took the piss out of me big style. So I put the larges on, and I went swimming. Yeah, so that's a speedo story. But crack on, Suzi. Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
Hey, that's what this show is all about.
Yeah.
The little incidental stories about piping hot.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes, thank you for that. Well done, Annie. I want to talk about Annie a bit later on, but maybe not at this moment. So, so back to the thing that stands out in the book. The amount of times that you hit a crossroad where you could have given up and you didn't.
Yeah.
Can you define what made you carry on, or was it different each time?
Yeah, probably different scenarios each time, Suzi. I think that I didn't really pride myself on having a plan B. I just saw this as a plan A, one-way type rope that I just have to make this work, you know, because there was actually, I had a quick lunch the other day with Loris Caparossi and yeah, which was great. And we were talking about, and he had some friends, and we're talking about budgets and whatnot, and just how such a fluke how I got through on the minimum funds that I had, but and the sponsorship that I had, and from Yellow Pages in Australia and all the rest of it. But you know, I think that if you know what you're taking on at the end of your career, so here I am now, 44, 43, whatever, saying if I had known at 16 what I was going to do, I mean, most people say you've got rocks in your head, which everyone did say I had rocks in my head at the time. And most people pursuing something very, very, you know, abnormal, which is trying to be a Grand Prix driver or MotoGP rider or whatever you're selected, or a politician or prime minister, whatever, something weird. Most people say you've got rocks in your head. So you just you stay present, you crack on, you just see the positivity in terms of how I'm going to keep this dream alive. And naivety is bliss, Susie. You'd know that. Like DC, I just lost me there. DC was trying to call me.
He should know better.
I know you've had him. Yeah. So
I haven't.
I think naivety is bliss. I just cracked on. And for example, one day Eddie Jordan's PA wouldn't put me through to him. Like it was like a week. And Eddie kept brushing me, and I just wanted to chat to Eddie. So I want to test. Can I come and use the gym? I just want to be around the team because I was unemployed in '99. I had nothing at the back end of the season. And I thought, stuff this. I'm going to wait for Eddie to leave the factory and I'm going to follow him in a car. I'm going to follow him and wait for him to pull over a petrol station or home or just doorstop him. And I pretty much did. And I think Eddie always liked that because like, holy shit, this guy wants it. And I just thought that as controlling what I could do. Like it's no big heartache for me to put petrol in my 2.1 Ford Fiesta. Sorry, my 1.1 Ford Fiesta B-Reg at the time. And follow him. So look, Sid, I think everyone's got the old, the big sob stories of the tricky moments, but ultimately, I've got a favourite saying that some of my buddies use in the military, which is average is easy. That's why it's popular. You got to be prepared to do something different because there's a lot of people out there that just average is fine. But if you just do average, then, it's like you, when you want to prepare to do something really, really, really well, and you've got a lot of people watching you, millions of people, I imagine that you do, and that's why you've been in the game a long time, because you bloody prepare and you do a good job. And any of us have to do that. So I just did what I did, Susie, and I was passionate as well. It was just passion. I was not going to go home with my tail between my legs, which is actually a Mick Doohan line. Mick said, mate, it's a long fucking way home with your tail between your legs.
Yeah.
And it is. It's a long way home with your tail between your legs. And I left there in 95 and I still haven't gone back yet. So, which I'll plan to ultimately, but it's been a great little first part of my life. Yeah.
You did go home once, didn't you?
Yeah.
But not for very long. It didn't take you long to realise that you'd
That's
made a mistake.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 96. So I got a bit homesick early on. And I went back and I thought, I was back there for like 4 or 5 days. I'm like, Mark, what are you thinking? This is such an opportunity. You're missing nothing here because you just have this little micro paranoia when you're young. Like, you want to have both. You want to have like, oh, well, I want to try and make it an F1, but I want to have all the comforts of home and I want to be, with family and I want to have, well, you can't, man. You can't have both. It's one or the other. You can't be I went gaps without seeing my family for ages, obviously. It's, and that's just part of it. That's what you sign up for.
Yeah, because we've had Martin's been on, Johnny's been on, Mark, all the kind of British Formula One royalty, if you like, DC, all talking about, just how tough it is, really. Hang on, what's this? Jason Plato says, hi, gorgeous, you or Webber. What does that mean? Oh, he'll be talking about Mark. Yeah. I did a podcast with Plato yesterday, and
good on him.
You can imagine.
I've taken a shine to him. He's a good-looking rooster, yeah.
He's a good bloke, yeah. He's one of the good guys.
Yeah.
I've totally forgotten what I was saying now.
You were talking about the royalty and the people
to get there. How hard it is to get into Formula One, because obviously there's only a really tiny amount of slots on the grid, and it's very expensive and it's really demanding. You have to be selfish and you have to be focused 100%, and you have to be in that top 0.0001%, whatever. That's from the UK, where you've got the grassroots level and everything is in place here. So coming from Australia, it must make it doubly, triply difficult. Yeah. And I'm not trying to, get you to do a sob story, but it was bloody hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's why the strike rate, Susie, is horrendous. Like for us guys, there's only four winners that from Australia that won a Grand Prix. With Daniel, Jack, and AJ, and myself. And MotoGP, obviously, I think the bikes were probably, bang for buck, had a little bit more of a run at it. I know with the super bikes and, with obviously the Troys we had there, and then obviously Mick and Wayne Gardner and
Casey
Kevin McGee, Casey, on the list goes on. I think the dirt track situation and bikes, you can actually get through the categories a little bit quicker. If you're special, you can actually make a bit more of a run at it, but it's still really, really hard. But yeah, it is geographically for the Kiwis and the Aussies. It's really, really, and again, it's not spilt milk. It's just facts. It's just really, really hard to, and I always used to joke to the Italians and some of the European guys saying, well, I've come to the UK for 4 days and I'm getting a bit lonely. And it's like, have a crack at have a crack at sort of, you know, being in a box room in Hainault in Essex for, you know, when your feet are touching, you know, one end of the, and your head's touching the other end, and you sort of, yeah, and it's like, wow, this is, and I don't have a clue what I was doing, Suzi. Not a clue. I'm going to the local gym there. I was on, you know, whatever that, I think it's, I don't know what the train line that back into town there, into London there. Anyway, I should know, but it's obviously a long time ago. Had too many hits to their head since then. But, and I'm going into this gym going, what am I doing? It's snowing, it is freezing, and I'm in there. No idea of my fitness. I'm just literally monkey with a machine gun, not knowing what I'm doing. But I got through.
Was it Michael Schumacher that changed your whole fitness regime training?
I think that he was definitely a pioneer when it came to rocking the establishment, even against, you know, obviously Andy Sandler. I mean, Alain Prost was always in good nick, but I think Michael, you know, somebody that was a generation that I could relate to in a way, because he was just, you know, he was the generation in front, and certainly looked up to him. Then you start to hear stories about how he went about the Monday to Friday component of the profession. So then, and also, again, it was something you could control. Like, I just thought, I didn't have the most talent, but I tell you what, I'm not going to get on the grid and make sure I get tired before anyone else. I have to make sure that the skilled guys, if they've got any weaknesses in their armory and they're going to be a bit soft in terms of their preparation, then that's my chance. So I saw that as a great opportunity to control the controllables. Cost me nothing, you know, to get fit. I mean, in a way, like if I get extraordinary, you know, if I was conditioned like as good as I could be, that was something where I knew late in the races I'll get opportunities, and that did happen, particularly in the junior categories like Formula 3000, which was the category before F1. Those cars are really, really challenging, and that was great for me because all the little softies struggled, which was great. They were skillful, but they just couldn't hang on to those things for an hour and a half, and that was great for me.
The one thing you also do in the book, which is brilliant, it was just a great way to, obviously it opened with Multi 21. We'll get to that, but you explained really, really well an installation lap and actually fitting into a car. So most Formula One fans will never know what it's like to be able to sit in a cockpit. They will never know. Most of them won't be able to get in anyway. And you struggled with your height, obviously.
I had a big ass as well. Yeah. Big ass.
Can you just, I don't know whether you can remember how you wrote it, but can you just sort of take us through getting into a cockpit, the feeling of it, how you're molded into the cockpit, and an installation lap on what you're doing?
Wow, yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, Suzi, to, like I say, to articulate something that we did as a norm. You know, we just saw it as that's what we did, and that was our job. That was our office and our sort of desk and our comfort zone, if you like. And it was interesting. I remember when the book first came out, and for some random bloody reason, Nicky Lauda come up to me, and Nicky said, the start of it, he said, mate, it's brilliant. I've really enjoyed reading someone trying to explain what we go through, even just an installation lap and sort of position. So that was obviously, you know, great to hear from him, because obviously he was extremely articulate and he was great with his words on trying to explain things, which I'm going to do an absolute shit-ass job now trying to explain that. But in terms of it's super claustrophobic. The cars are very, very, very tight. The seat is made to pretty much within a millimeter of your body. So that's molded to your, basically from the top of your shoulders through to your all the way through your back, behind your ribs, around your ass, and the top part of your hamstrings, like underneath. So you need a really, really awesome seat to be strong, because the G-forces are high. If you've got a compromised seating position from an ergonomic perspective, then you're going to run out of, your conditioning and fitness is going to be exposed, because you've got to hang on to the thing. So you want to be able to be comfortable, but still not have too much room, and movement is bad. You cannot have too much movement. 6-point seat belt, obviously 2 belts up through the groin area, which has got to be worked on, to say the least, in terms of how they work. And then over the lap straps over sort of probably just below your belly button, which seems super high, but when you're sort of sitting in that position, it's around your belly button, maybe a bit lower. And then you have the big straps over our shoulders that go down. So when they're done up, are super tight. The mechanic has to do that. You cannot do that. One, you can't see the belts because you've got your helmet on or your gear, all the rest of it. And two, you can't get the leverage. Well, you can once you're sort of in, you can get sort of the tightness, but it's actually quite a good angle for a mechanic to do that in front of you. And then just the lack of visibility when you drive out of the garage in terms of, you've got your feet up like a bathtub. Your feet are quite high.
Yeah, can you just talk about your feet for a moment before you get going?
Yeah, so a Formula One car has two pedals. So it has a throttle on the right and a brake pedal on the left. And again, the pedals are pretty much molded because you don't want your feet moving around too much at all, especially somewhere like Monaco or Monza where the curves are quite high and your feet can jump around a little bit. You're dealing with a lot of horsepower under your right foot, so you want to make sure that the tension in the spring of the throttle is correct, but you haven't got like a lot of throw on it. It's not like an old tractor. It's very, very short sort of throttle sort of throw on it, sort of around 20, 22, 25 mil, I think, something like that. Probably not even that much, even a bit less than that. And then, so your feet are quite high. That's what, whenever I put exports people, I even put my mum in my car, believe it. I sat mum in one of my F1 cars. She said, "You bloody crazy bastard." I can't, because she got actually claustrophobic. We couldn't get her out because you're so low in there. Once you're in there, you feel like you're really part of the car, which is exactly how it should be.
Yeah. So
your feet are quite high. The steering wheel is pretty much, in front of your chest. Again, quite close. Like the elbows are quite, it's a very confined environment, even from the steering wheel position. And the chassis, the side of the chassis was beside your calf muscles. So there's just, everything is pretty much made to measure. And as you said before, I was a nightmare because I was quite tall. 184 centimeters is an absolute nightmare for a designer. So it was literally a pain in the ass. But in terms of the driving in that environment, it takes time to get used to, anyone coming from a sports car or something different, you'd think there's no way they can drive this car on the limits because your visibility, you're very low. The sensation for speed's extraordinary. You've got the mirrors there, you've got the vibration, you've got the, so it is very, very visceral. It's intense. It's emotional. It's just every single person that sits in a Grand Prix car is absolutely blown away by, they cannot see a thing. They've got no visibility and they don't even put a helmet on. I said, well, once you put a helmet on, they cannot see anything. They get claustrophobic. That's before you put the belts on. And because most people, back when I was reasonably skinny, most people couldn't even sit in the seat because the seat was so tiny, So yeah, that was a bit of an in-joke when we had these superstars turn up and want to sit in the cars. And I said, yeah, no worries, we just watch them. These Hollywood people, whatever. Yeah, well, you're not getting your ass in there, mate. So yeah, and we let the cameras roll on that because yes, have a bit of a laugh. But yeah, so yeah,
and
they're designed for speed, Suzi. They're designed for speed. They're not designed for comfort.
Absolutely not. And your kit that you're wearing, that is also to the nth degree so exact. I was interested to hear what you were saying about your race boots because you tried to keep the same ones all season, didn't you?
Yeah, once they're sort of run in, like again for me, the thickness of the sole was very important because it couldn't, if it was quite thick on the sort of gauge of the sole, that meant that my knees were a little bit higher and my knees were very close to the top of the chassis. And when I talk about the chassis is not something that's soft and cuddly, but it's like carbon fiber. It's like a brick wall. The thing is so strong. So if your knees are bouncing into a brick wall during a Grand Prix, it's not overly nice. So boots were like slippers. To be honest, they were fireproof, but they were very, very fit for purpose. They were not, the sort of boy racers and the sort of gentleman drivers love wearing them around the paddock, or even some of the Germans wear them to restaurants, believe it or not. But in terms of, very thin sole. And once I worn them in, I loved keeping them for the season.
And that the Minardi, obviously your first Formula One drive. I mean, you said in the book that you didn't actually really fit in the car, so that must have been pretty painful.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, because Minardi always had pretty much Italian drivers, so and they're the Italian drivers were famous for being quite short, and for me to be there and did a seat fit, it nearly broke my heart because I went to Faenza in Italy there, and I sat in the car and I'm looking at the engineers and the designers going like, guys, how am I going to drive this thing? Like, it's just so bloody, my knees, my elbows, it was just so small. So I just we fudged a lot of the tests, to be honest, because there's a lot of FIA tests that you have to do to demonstrate this clearance and all the rest of it. And you've got and we basically had to bullshit so many of those to get through, because there was no way I was legal. I was illegal driving that car. Yeah.
The only time in your life you've ever been illegal?
Well, it was personal safety. That's all it was, and I was happy to take the risk. So it wasn't performance illegal. It was safety illegal. What
a race that was, though, your first Formula One race.
Bloody hell, yeah. First race, I mean, you couldn't make it up. Paul Stoddard, team owner, Australian. As you do, we took a 747 down there. Like, it was, Stoddy had a 747 at the time. We bounced through KL because we had a sponsor in Kuala Lumpur. And I don't think they ever paid the bill. That's another story. But, so Eddie Irvine was on the flight with me. He was in the front with me. I remember being this young, sort of, clearly, virgin, never done a Grand Prix, eating well, doing all my things. And then Eddie Irvine's in front of me having a beer and having some, having a microwave burger that had been murdered 10 times over. And I'm like, wow, this is what guys do. That I'm like, shit, I've got a bit to learn here. I think these guys aren't taking that serious. So, but anyway, he wasn't the sort of Michael Schumacher mode. Had a great career, obviously Eddie did. But so anyway, I got down there, and the race, is Ralph Schumacher took out most of the field at the first corner all day long. Suzi, that should have been red flags. That race should have been red flag. Yeah. But I popped out I think in 8th, and the crowd went crazy. I was and as the race went on, there was a bit more attrition, and finished bloody 5th, which is the longest the car ever ran, pretty much in its entirety. We didn't finish many races that year, so I think I used all my luck in Australia in my first race, but it certainly brought the house down. It was a pretty big afternoon.
Yeah, you even had a phone call from Murray Walker, didn't
you? Yeah, Murray. Wow, God, it was. I think even it was funny because Minardi's at the other end of the pit lane, as you all know how the sort of layouts of those paddocks are, and Ferrari. I mean, Michael won the race. He lapped me twice or 3 times. God knows how many times he lapped me. But he then Ferrari, the press office, like, we need to. They come down for a photo. They come down for a photo with us. It was extraordinary. So so that was the papers the next day. It was nice to have a piggy with Michael, and so it was but I was a 2-race contract. So I had a 2-race. My first Formula One contract was for 2 races, and that was my first race. So so Stoddy, the team boss, said to me, he said, because I was waiting for some sponsorship, and I said, look, we've got nothing, absolutely nothing. And he said, well, with that result, you can finish the season now. So that made my year, literally made my year.
Yeah, so a lifeline. And it seems when you look back throughout your career, that's how it kind of bombed.
Yes.
Oh, wasn't it? There was a lifeline. Yeah. All driven by you and Annie. Team Mark Webber, really, together, because Annie's extraordinary, isn't she? Such great vision, really strong woman in motorsport. And you together, you've just you created this incredible career for yourself.
Yeah, we got through. Like, we did our best, Suzi. We did our best. I mean, we had some nice victories, no question about it. There was a lot of naysayers that obviously, striving to get to Formula One was clearly a big dream. But a lot of luck, got some results on the right day. Like you said, we had a lot of phone calls right at the right time when it was all over. But that was the way it was. You got to be in it to win it. And we kept it lean and mean. We were very uncomplicated. We just kept focusing on moving forward. And but don't give it too much credit. Holy shit, like, come on, let's back off a bit. I mean, it was mainly me. Come on.
Well, you were in the car, pretty squished in at times.
Yeah.
Bouncing out all bruised.
Yeah.
But you need that, don't you? You do need that support. You do need that kind of help behind you as a driver, because when you get in the car, surely all you want to do is drive and focus 100% on the task in hand, not be worrying about money coming in, sponsors, all the sort of PR side of it. I know that you were really involved in that side of it as well after racing, and sending faxes, going back in the day and just trying to generate this interest and this funding and this money to keep on
the fax
going.
Machines. She used to write a press release, like, I'd have a result, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And that was what she was good at, actually. So when I had a really shit weekend, she's like, no, we're not just sending press releases out when you win. We're going to send press releases out with the people if we're going to take them on a journey here, if you've screwed up today, we're going to tell them how you did. And I used to sit there in Aylesbury, I remember, and if it ever went onto a second page, I have to type in, +61, all the Australian numbers, which would frigging take forever. And then, like, you know, the mailing list was, you know, whatever it was. Now we just obviously go bish, bosh, bash, and you know, copy, paste, and she's in. But then it was individual, you know, and then every now and again we go to a second page. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to spend, you know, so it'd go from 40 to 80 faxes or whatever. So anyway, that's what I had to do.
So you used to say to Annie, make sure it's all on one page.
One pager, yeah. Which she never could do because she's a bloody missile on the laptop. She's a missile on it. So
she's awesome. So, I love Annie. Yeah. She's great. Would you describe your relationship with Formula One from childhood now? Because I know you were obviously completely obsessed with trying to get into Formula One, but a love affair where you fell in and out of love with it.
Oh, yeah, mainly was in love, yes. I think as a young lad, totally addicted. Like, I would watch the races over and over again. I'd you know, do my parents' head in because I'd literally get home from school and watch the races from during the week again. And I'd tape the Adelaide Grand Prix, which was broadcast from Friday through to Sunday. And I'd have all my tapes lined up. I'd have them tagged and say, yeah, make sure this is that. Because back then, you know, obviously you couldn't just, you know, tape stuff, you know, or you know, watch it on catch up TV, all the rest of it. As we know, you had to put a tape in and all the rest of it. So, you know, I just was addicted to that. And having then Autosport magazine was arriving at my house. Well, sorry, the Newsaids. I used to ride my pushy down, ride the BMX down to the Newsaids, and it was like 3 weeks after the races, the magazine would arrive. You know, that's when I'd get the magazine. So it was pretty clumsy to say the least. So absolute love affair all the way up to then when you're in an environment where the pressure's high, of course, and you have a different environment and you see a bit of the politics and you see a bit of, you know, so yeah, you see different facets of the sport. There's no question about it. Did I, you know, have some tricky phases or some disappointing phases? Absolutely, yes. But I think that when you sign up for, as we said before, that type of sport, and it's a huge business. There's a lot at stake. And sometimes you might be left a bit wondering or a bit disappointed with certain scenarios, but ultimately the lion's share was super positive. I mean, holy hell, I loved the people I worked with, the people I was around. The drivers pushed me to a level I never, ever would have done on my own. I mean, they were a pain in the ass. They gave me sleepless nights. They were better than me, but, you know, they took me to a place where I did improve because I had no bloody choice. So, loved it, Suzi. Look, at the end of the whole thing, are you drained? Are you tired? Are you, you know, sick of being within half a kilo for 8 years all the time for 11 months of the year? That's part of being a pro. If you don't like it, mate, piss off. That's part of it. So don't you know, get the dummy out and say, well, it's not fair, because that's the way it is. You know, you can only do what you had, you know, with the skills I had, and I did that. Would I like to have had another run at certain things? No question about it. But we don't have a crystal ball, and that's not part of the game. You don't get a second run at, you know, lots of things in life, because that's part of the journey. You got to go through the mistakes yourself.
Obviously, there were the crashes, Mark, that could have, even though you know managed to walk away from them, there could have, to most normal people, they would have gone, I'm not getting in another car. But if we just go back to Le Mans, I mean, not one but two massive incidents.
Yeah, the cars then were very dangerous, just the way the aerodynamics were set up on them. So, you know, BMW had flipped a car, Porsche had flipped a car, you know, Mercedes, who I was racing for at the time, our car was very underpowered. So we had a very poor performance on the horsepower front. So what do you do then? You pull the downforce out of the car. The car's you've got to try and find some straight line speed in another way. So those cars were unstable at high speed, and I did flip one on Thursday night. I flipped one then on the Saturday morning. So they were very, very nasty accidents, and obviously the program was cut after that. The cars were too dangerous, and thankfully all of us guys walked away with no big injuries. The only one unfortunate was Michele Alboreto. He had a puncher, I believe, a right rear puncher in the Audi, and it was an open top car around that era, and he did unfortunately tragically lose his life. So the cars were dangerous. The spectators were close. The marshals were close. So it was wild times. A lot of pressure on people, and it was a tough environment. So when I got out of that program, it was a bit of a blessing. It was the making of the next phase of my career, to be honest, because I was unemployed, but then, and I was on the bones of my ass. We had absolutely nothing, really. We were like, I was back to racing instructor, 43 pounds a day, instructing people how to drive. And in the racetrack. So, and then Eddie and Stoddy and we managed to get back on the dance floor again and keep the dream alive.
Incredible. What's interesting, I've heard bike racers talk about how time slows down.
Yeah.
Obviously, a normal person will never experience what this is like, but that happened for you during both of those flips, or one of them?
Oh, both of them, absolutely, yeah. I think that, you know, the mind in a highly, incredibly stressful situation, that the mind is, the frame rate just goes so slow. It just is really, it is so slow motion. There was no panic. I mean, I did think maybe it could go either way here. I'm not sure. I don't want any pain. Just turn the lights off. If it's not going to work out, I don't want, you know, because cars in the trees at 200 mile an hour is, you know, it's a lottery ticket, right? So, you know, I was calm. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't frustrated. I wasn't like, why me? So you've got all this time to think about, you know, I thought about, obviously, well, the three women in my life, which was my mum, wife, and my sister, thinking, you know, wow, this is it. Bit early, bit young, but maybe this is my ticket. And then you come out the other end, you're like, okay, and then it's violent. Obviously, it's super aggressive. There's, you know, the impacts are big, and there's fluid everywhere, and you worry about fire then, because those things, if they catch fire, you know, that would be absolutely horrendous. So you're thinking, I mean, that's when I did get a bit scared. I mean, you think about fire, you think, oh shit, if this thing goes up, that would be really, really bad. So, but the mind is phenomenal, and you hear about stories, whether it's whatever, Suzi, you know, with shark attacks, guys paddling out, you know, to help guys that's been attacked by a shark, or friends going to him or her to help out, and, you know, not in your right mind, like we're having a conversation about, if you see a big dorsal fin of a shark, you know, if you're going to start paddling towards someone. But the mind and the body, the fight or flight, we have this innate inbuilt hard drive that makes us incredibly resilient and stoic and cool when you most need it. And that was the case for me, actually, was that, you know, for me anyway, I wasn't panicking. I was pretty calm, you know, and I think that's normal.
Calm.
I'm not trying to be a hero here. I think it's relatively normal that just the body goes into another phase, or the mind does. The mind does, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, an incredible time. So would you say that those kind of things, obviously there was a sort of lot of politics around that weekend as well, and with Mercedes, and you not feeling as though they were actually listening to you. I mean, it was quite a desolate time, that weekend, wasn't it, in terms of the connection with Mercedes? I know it's a long time ago now.
Yeah, no, it was relatively straightforward, though, Sugi. It was, you know, I did a lot of development with that car. I mean, Bernd Schneider and myself. Bernd Schneider, he is the man, like at Mercedes, and he's a German rock star when it comes to driving those type of cars, and DTM for that matter, German touring cars. So he was my teammate. We did a lot of work with that car. I trusted that car so much. We knew the car so well. So it was a huge surprise. We started to have these problems when we least wanted them. We had no time to react. You know, we had there was rumors about us that the car had flipped in previous test sessions, and we tried to take the downforce off, and we went too far. That's all bullshit. The car, the first time that thing took off was at the race weekend, and we had 3 on the weekend. So, you know, we went down the wrong way, and the cars were too unstable. So, so yeah, for me, I think because the first flip there was no moving footage. There was some still footage. Sorry, Suzi. The first one there was no still footage, and there was no moving footage. So the car was destroyed. But I said, like, the thing, you know, there's no way I can do that to the car without it being upside down and flipping on the straight, because they just see the telemetry. The car is left the ground, but they were trying to deny themselves that something quite extreme was
So they thought
happening.
it was you?
Well, they thought I was too close to the other car. Like Frank Biller, I remember it very clearly. Again, this is where the brain's amazing. It's in my head probably for my whole life. But, you know, Frank Biller, who was cooperating really well with me, because he was just sort of letting me through. And it's quite narrow there, that section going down to Indianapolis after the Mulsanne hairpin. And he was cooperating with me. But and I just got in his wash, and I wasn't super close, but I was, you know, this is the first time we've done this. And it's like, here we are. And it was like, I think it was 0.4 of a second that I got from the throttle onto the brake. So inside half a second, I was well and truly into the brake, but it was too late. So I think that was, for all of us, I mean, even me, I was in denial, like, this can't happen again. Like, was it freaky? Was it like, so we're trying to stay positive but also addressing, like, we need to talk about this. And then when the second one happened, within half a lap, by the way, I went out in another brand new car within half a lap and flipped again. And I said, guys, well, you can poke this right up because I'm out of here. You can see you later. I'm gone. And that's when it got really testing, because I think they were rabbit in the headlights. They couldn't believe what to do. They had no time. The race was in 4 hours. They had, like, what do we do? We've spent these, how many tens of millions of German marks, and we need to make a decision. And ultimately, they did run the other two cars in the race, and my sister car, it flipped as well. So then they pulled the other car in. So it was shocking.
And those moments where you have that kind of scenario where you feel quite alone in your thoughts and you're right. Are these the moments that you look back and I think, well, actually, that made me, for want of a better phrase, made me stronger. It made me drive harder. It made me want to prove myself more. Are those the defining moments when stuff goes wrong? Is that where you can learn from?
Absolutely, Suzi. I think that I did not. In the ideal plan in your career, you're not having that scenario happen. Obviously, psychologically, it took a while for me to get over those. Yes, I mean, I didn't, advertise that at the time, clearly, because it's not great for my prospects of employment. But it was tough, and so you do learn the most, obviously, when you've been tested the most, because I had to react and pivot within my career. So I think that the opportunity to because I was young and I was trying to go to Bernd, who was a senior driver. He was a lead. I'm saying, mate, we have to do something here, mate. Like, we can't. How is this? I don't want you to get hurt. I've just got through this, but we are literally playing with our lives here. We need to make a call here. And he was obviously under extreme pressure himself as well from those guys. And I had a very small vote at the table, even though I'd been through the shunts. But I was the new kid on the block. So, ultimately, you learn. You put people on pedestals. I think when you're younger, you give a lot more respect out because and that's how I was brought up. Obviously, you should do that and not be, too passive, but you've got to be, earn your stripes and not be too cavalier with such things. But I did know that, off the back of that, when the going gets tough, you've got to, roll your sleeves up, and which I did later on in my career several times. That moment was very, very good for me to experience that tough moment to really stand my ground in other situations.
And are you talking about Red Bull there or different?
Just more technical, I think. Technical safety, like just in terms of if guys are doing things a little bit more on the edge, or we're not sure on things, whether it's brake wear, whatever. Like I did take risks, no question about it. It was if there was results there and we had to run the gauntlet on certain things. Naturally, when your adrenaline's going, you're always, as a racing driver, instinctively you're still taking risk because that's the nature of the job. But when we're doing concepts or in the early phase of certain things, then I'm like, guys, I've seen guesswork in the past and it bit us in the arse. So let's just get a little bit more practical about certain things. And in Formula One, it is not as, it was a little bit more scientific, let's say.
Yeah. Do you think what happened to you in Le Mans in any way helped you with what happened in Valencia years later? Or is it are you just going through? I mean, obviously, when you're flipping in a car, there's nothing you can do, is there? Or is there?
No, nothing. Pray.
Right.
I crossed my arms. I remember crossing my arms, which I don't think I did in Le Mans, but I did cross my arms in Valencia. And I knew there was a bridge somewhere, but in my head I thought there was a bridge, which there wasn't. But I actually took out a small brake board on the right hand side, the catch fencing. But Rob Marshall, who's one of the main designers at Red Bull, still there now, great guy, and great dancer too. When we win Monaco, he can dance. But he
was he breakdancing on the floor? Was that him?
Oh yeah, my God, yeah, it was yeah, breakdancing as well. So he designed, like he's together with Adrian, they obviously clearly designed the car. Anyway, he said, mate, the brake pressure that you use, like when you're going towards, even though the brakes were the car's lost all its corners. When I landed, the car was starting to disintegrate. But when the brake pressure I used before the car hit the ground, like just the sheer force, they couldn't believe the numbers. So adrenaline again, just I'm in the sky, but I'm still got my foot. I mean, imagine like instinct is brake. I'm in the sky, like it's doing nothing. But I had my feet, I was in my arms crossed, crossed them like that, and then. So yeah, but he said the pressure, they've never seen that type of loads on the calipers before. So he said you God knows, you probably nearly busted the system. That much pressure. But yeah, I got through it again.
Yeah, thank goodness you did.
And the medical centre was at that corner, which was good. So I could just get straight in the car. They took me straight to the medical centre. They said you're in shock. So I'm not in shock. I'm fine. I know exactly what's going on. I'm not in shock at all. I'm pissed off. That's what's happening. But my heart rate was very low. Like my blood pressure, heart rate, the whole thing was actually, so apparently I was, there was a bit going on. I did, but yeah, all good. Won the next race.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the race wins. There were 9 of them. So, take us through emotions, take us through what was going through your head, which were the special ones. I mean, obviously all of them special, but which ones really stood out for you?
Your first victory, I think any Formula One driver talks about the first win as being quite unique. Particularly for me, I felt that I was ready to win a bit earlier, but just that I was certainly tested in terms of my patience and making sure that when the opportunity did come, that the victory was there. That was, I think it was nearly 20 years between the drinks for Australians too, winning at that level. So it's a long old stint, between myself and Alan Jones winning at that level in Germany as well. So it was I had a drive-through penalty. So the race was tricky, but in the end, I was so happy, Suzi, that everyone else had a good day. My first victory wasn't given to me on a plate by 3 guys dropping out in front of me, which would have pissed me off no end. I wanted to go from pole, disappear, and just, when that first one come, I wanted to make sure that it was on my terms, which was the case. Monaco victories as well. I mean, they're clearly unique. That's a pretty special Grand Prix to win.
Is that the hardest circuit? Monaco?
I think probably Suzuka is the hardest track in the world. Was for me
one
anyway.
of the greatest.
Monaco, I think, Enzo Ferrari always said it's nearly worth a world championship in terms of PR. For Ferrari, it was anyway back obviously back in the day. But it is a very prestigious event. Obviously, it's the Wimbledon of our calendar, let's say. So, and then even interesting, like Brazil, I did well there, and the crowd. I mean, the Brazilian crowd, like you have Monaco's, as you could say the prawn sandwich brigade in terms of the people. It's quite a posh setting to say the least. And the Brazilian crowd is they're up the catch fencings. They're passionate. They're hungry.
Backstreet Warriors, yeah.
Yeah, they're shouting at you, and the driver parade in Interlagos in Brazil is something else. So. I always did it with Rubens because I wanted to get shouting out to the drivers, and it wasn't always pretty. But the victories always look, Suzi. They're always you'll take any victory in the end, however it comes across. You will always take it. They're few and far between, and they were special moments for sure.
There were loads of questions sent in. I think I've tried to cover some of them in the chat that we've had. But you've got a new bike, haven't you? You've got a new motorbike.
Yes, I have. I've got a new. I've got a GSA 1250 adventure bike. Nice. So so I went for had a good. Actually, Eric Banner is to blame for this because he's good mate of mine, and we did a really nice trip in Australia just before the Grand Prix, actually, which was absolutely sensational. And I still think about it often. I loved it. So, and that rural part of Australia, going through that, parts of, of Australia that, for me, like I've done a bit of travel through Australia, but there's still so many, pieces of jewelry that you come across with so much character, and the light and, the stars and night, it sounds all romantic and sort of, a bit over the top, but it is spectacular, doing that type of trip. It's a freedom machine. I love it. So I have got a new bike. That is totally correct.
More to come, it sounds like, if you enjoyed it that much, more kind of road adventures. Hey, if you were Valentino, talking of bikes, just to throw a bit of two-wheeled in here, I'm so sorry because the time has just run away. I just took a talk.
It has, yeah. I'm brushing calls left, right, and centre here.
I know.
I'm loving
Thank
it, Susie.
you.
It's good. Yeah.
I will keep you for 5 more minutes, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah, that's what Anne says. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. After all the years. So, Valentino Rossi, would you stay or would you go?
Oh dear.
Because you know Valet pretty good, I think, don't you?
Yeah. Wow. I think all of us, the neutrals, which I'm a neutral, we all want it to go for forever. We don't want it to really stop in terms of the energy and the fun and everything he brings to the sport. And even if Valet is, not at his peak anymore, which obviously you're going to argue he's clearly not. It's getting a bit trickier for him. He's had an unbelievable career. The timing of finishing is brutal. It is horrible, and he is an absolute out-and-out racer. So you only get one shot at it. That's what I would say. So when he stops, that's it. So if he wants to, it is totally. No one else can make this call for him. If he wants to run around a bit longer and whatever his benchmark is, the illusion of one more championship, I think, is quite hard to believe that's going to be possible.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, but anyway, I hope that I'm frustrated. I mean, as we all are this year, we haven't seen a normal season, and but anyway, I think we should all get a year back, shouldn't we? This year, 2020, we shouldn't age a year. It should just be wiped off. So,
I'm doing that. I'm going to have my birthday again because it was a big special one and it was rubbish. So just going to do that again at some point, maybe.
Okay.
All right. I think Valet's going to stay because to me, he's justified why he would stay, and he's done it publicly. So I think he'll stay a bit longer. He's funny though, isn't he? Valentino, he's funny. Don't you think? So,
I think so. I think he'll stay.
Right. Quick one. Gareth Wills, let's try and cover this off. Do you regret not lamping Vettel after Multi 21?
I was very calm. I was calm on TV. I mean, afterwards there was a bit more. It got a bit heated a bit later on. But look, I think at that point, I mean, I could have, but it's what I did at the time. And no, I didn't need to. I mean, it was all there. It was all there for all of us to see. So yeah, it's not really your style, is it, lumping people? And it was naughty. Cars are my things. Your relationship with Seb? Now very good. Yeah, fine. I mean, now looking at the kitchen, it's cooled down big style. Obviously, I'm retired and I'm out of it. So. Yeah, we drove each other crazy in 2010, literally like to the limits. And Lewis and Fernando were in that championship too to the last race. So it was an extraordinary year, one of the best years Formula One had seen. And I picked up some bloody pain in the ass characters to try and get the championship off. But it was, as I said, they drove me to new limits. But we're fine now. We get on. And I actually do wish him all the best. I have no, people think, oh, that's bullshit. No, I have no, I do hope that he has a good finish his career. I really want that to happen. When you strike me as someone that feels very satisfied with your career. Do you have any regrets? Oh, I think that if I would have liked to have done some European go-karting, for example, much earlier, but we just were not in that position. All the guys I raced, they had huge mileage and exposure in Europe, and learning that language much earlier. I think would have been a good thing, but that was again not possible because I started late in karting, and also I was in Queanbeyan in New South Wales. How am I going to race in Italy, where the hotbed of karting was when I was 14 or 15? It was just something that some guys did do it, but from Australia, not many, but it was possible. It wasn't impossible. So, is that a regret? Was it possible? Not impossible, but virtually impossible financially for my parents at that time, no chance. And also I was still at school and whatnot and going to Italy. So yeah, that's interesting. I always thought about how that would have looked differently. And then I think maybe going to Renault as well instead of Williams. Yeah. But again, that's a shame, wasn't it? That's the way it was. Renault hadn't won a race before, in terms of they had with Michael, obviously in the mid-90s, but not around that era. They were not the form team when I was making those calls. And then they were the form team. You're like, shit, maybe I could, that would have been better. But yeah, so, and 2008, if I just had a different start in one of the races, I might be world champion. That's look, you know, and that's going to be the quote probably that some pot noodle head will drag out of this interview, that, you know, if I had a better start, I'd be world champion. Well, it's not that. It's just they're the fine margins, and that's what. And you're right, Suzi. I'm proud. I'm proud of what I have. You know, would I love 15 victories? Yes. But when you said I could have one, then I'd probably, when I left Australia, if I'd even race in F1. So we're very good at moving the targets on ourselves, which is good, but you've got to be careful not to be unrealistic.
I'm going to let you go because I'm so sorry this has run on so long. I do really appreciate your time, and I know everybody.
That's all right.
Everybody listening would just be enthralled. I'm just looking and seeing all the love coming up for you on the comments.
Thank you. When are we catching up for a rosé?
Yes, please. It will be really great. Would love to do that. Love come and hang out with you guys. So let's do that very soon. And just very quickly before you go, the picture behind you. I haven't got my glasses on. What is that, Mark?
Oh, Sterling Moss.
Oh, okay. Yes, it is. I can see now. Yeah, the great Sir Sterling Moss.
Yeah, bless him. Bless his heart. Yeah. He taught me the word as a young. I remember I met him like 20 years ago now, and I never heard the word crumpet before. But, So really nice crumpet. I said, that was quite. So anyway, that's Sterling. Bless his heart. He ticked all the boxes. He
certainly did, and the crumpet thing was a very old-fashioned terminology, which I think only he could get away with now. Sadly.
Oh yes, I know, all of us. Yes, it's all. I don't know what we can bloody say now, but anyway,
say what you want. You always do.
All the best.
All the best. Lots of love, Mark. Thank you very much. Cheers.
See ya, no worries.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.